Hello, I'm Brittney Hazelton, and this is ArkLaTex Artistry, where we explore the arts in our area. Today's guest is about to make their artist debut at Southern University's Museum of Art. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, what's up, everyone? My name is Charles, the artist.
All right, so first off, I've seen you around before, so it's nice to finally actually get to have a conversation with you. Um, so let's talk about your exhibition opening. What is it titled, and when is it?
My exhibition is titled Monstrosity. It is opening March 27th.
All right. So, first off, what mediums do you work with, especially well, specifically for this show?
For right now, it's primarily acrylic,
Okay.
like canvas paintings.
All right. So, you use canvas specifically, not canvas board or anything like that, just canvas.
As of right now, yeah, only canvas. I
Okay.
haven't tried using canvas board yet.
Oh, I would definitely recommend it. It's really great stuff, but you want to sand it a little bit once you get. If you
Hmm.
buy pre-gesso, you want to sand it down and gives a good flesh, like smooth finish. But canvas
Hmm.
work is just as well. I work with both personally. Um, so how would you describe your work? What subjects and themes do you portray in it?
I would describe my work as multi-genre. I dabble in surrealist commentaries on society.
Yeah, I noticed the surrealism. There's a bit of a, um, from what I've seen of your work so far, there's a bit of a sci-fi element. You show a lot of like robotics and other things like that. Kind of a horror theme in some of your work as well. I can say that I really like it from what I've seen so far. Um,
Thank you.
do you utilize symbolism in your work? Would you say?
I would say I would say 50% of my work is symbolism. I work very hard to. I do a lot of research to utilize symbols from all kinds of different cultures, different religions, different languages. I love I love creating pieces where everyone gets something different,
Yeah.
um, and I like being intentional about it. Uh, I don't really create a lot of pieces that are made specifically to be vague or ambiguous. I try to be very specific about my messaging. Um, and so I set up a few different messages to grasp.
Could you tell me, for you personally, when you're doing your work, what are some of the messages that you really speak to you when creating it?
I don't really have a lot of messaging that speaks specifically to me.
Okay.
I it's mostly I speak about whatever feels the most pressing at the time,
So
and that could be
societal issues and things of that sort.
pretty much yes. And it's not really because I think a common misconception is if you're dealing with societal issues, most likely it leans towards some type of political spectrum, but that's also not, you know, I generally don't, that's not my primary focus.
Okay.
When I say societal things, I talk about anything in the realm of humanity, uh, and that could just so happen to be political.
Yeah. So
So, it
generally
could,
issues that humanity struggles with.
yes, yes. And
Uh,
most of the time, it's things that we don't commonly look at.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm interested to take a deeper look and thinking like now that you have told me that and looking at your work, um, it's going to be more interesting for me to explore. I feel like. Um,
Hmm.
so what? So you utilize symbols. I noticed that in especially in the robotics. Is there a reason for the sci-fi elements?
Well, hmm, I'm assuming what you're referring to was one of the pictures that I put up for my profile picture.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Uh,
that's
with
that's actually one piece. Oh, go ahead.
the one with the robotic man with the screens, I believe, and
Hmm.
the clown above it. I was curious about that one specifically.
Well, that's actually one of the hero pieces from the upcoming show.
Oh, okay.
And I say hero piece not because they're a protagonist, but they're supposed to be like the sort of figurehead piece. Um,
Okay.
it's
Oh yeah. Ah, that one I love that. Specifically, it gives me kind of and this is just my perspective. It gives me kind of a like a lich lord or kind of like undead king, but in a sci-fi way. You know what I mean?
mhm.
And I
Well,
just go ahead.
the pose he's it's actually meant to be Jesus,
Ah, interesting.
and
Well,
it's a very common pose. I think dating back to 1400s or 1500s depiction of Jesus, and the hand position is very specific.
that's probably where I've seen it. I used to be very Catholic, and I remember that it just
Hmm.
brought back a lot of nostalgia for me. Uh,
Yeah, but the
so
piece is not meant to be a critique on religion itself. It's not a critique on religion at all. It utilizes Jesus as a figure of worship and replaces the idea of what people are actually worshiping.
interesting.
So this technological creature is more of a manifestation of the overabundance of technology within our lives and how it has become a figurehead of worship.
Oh, I love that. I definitely see that. Here, I feel that with the piece that definitely. I especially wanted to ask about that one. Um, so what inspires the current style of that you work in specifically?
Well, a while ago, I used to call my style alt pop
Hmm.
because pop art centers around uh, utilizing popular culture and
Yeah,
kind of remixing and comic book style. And I do love using big, thick lines and
yeah,
more graphic style. But the reason I call it alt pop is because it isn't inherently focusing on pop
yeah.
culture icons or any iconography in that way. It just utilizes the sort of thick comic booky lines that are associated with graphic novels and popular culture like cartoons and anime.
So I'm
But
guessing
I try to
those things were a big influence on you as an artist when developing.
not really.
Really? Huh. You just
Yeah.
enjoy the style?
Well, it's I never set out to emulate the style. It's more that I like to be very direct with
Okay.
what I'm doing, and I think people can be so bogged down on technique. I think people can. I think there's a level of legitimacy that is more accepted within spaces that seem to prop up more realism or painting like the Renaissance masters, and it seems to ignore the actual content of the art. And so the idea is to kind of strip back that layer and do something that is maybe a bit, uh, maybe what would be a good word? I've heard the word used infantile or primitive. And
Hmm.
so the purpose is to purposefully like kind of peel away those layers, be very direct and focus on the message, and then I can then I can pull on some of these more difficult techniques, or some of these Renaissance paintings, Caravaggioism and the Baroque period and all those different times.
Yeah.
I can pull on those things because when I do so, now it's even more important as opposed to just being a vehicle uh, for legitimacy. It becomes a vehicle for the storytelling.
Oh, that's I completely understand that in terms of like for me like style and I never was one to personally in my stuff was never one to want to replicate anyone. So I just wanted to kind of capture what I had in my mind. So it's like however I needed to achieve that, no matter what medium it was, and no matter how it looked in perspective to others and compared to
Mhm.
others, it's like I just want to have my work there. I just wanted
Mhm.
to capture the characters. Imagine in my mind for me, because I do a lot of characters, like random characters. I like to imagine like what they're like, what are their personalities like, and I just focus on that when I'm creating the work.
Mhm.
Not about an image, not trying to look at something and duplicate it, just create it.
Yeah.
And then you get unique styles out of that.
Mhm.
And yeah, it may look like you said, you weren't necessarily inspired by those things. It's just I see how the bold lines give it that, you're defining it, you're making it more of it more defined, more state a statement about the character or the
Mhm.
entity. I'm
Yeah.
kind of the same way too. So I understand
Well,
that.
for this specific series of pieces, the plan is to have most of the creature or entity itself be depicted in the sort of thick black line flat style,
Yeah.
more graphic style, and then to have all of the other elements like clothing, or if there's like trees or brush, to have those things be more realistically rendered.
Nice.
And the point is to separate those things out as if the technological creature itself is kind of a mockery or an affront to the nature around it.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's probably I can see why I'm kind of captivated by your work that I've seen so far. I look forward to seeing more of your work as you
Yeah, you
progress.
ain't seen nothing yet.
Oh, I like that. So, what? How did like you decide to start doing work as an artist professionally?
Um, I couldn't think of anything else to do.
I mean,
Um,
that's that's a lot of. I think that's probably a good 50% of the reason for most artists.
yeah,
you
I,
know.
I think it never really stemmed from actually wanting to do art, because to be honest, doing art or anything artistic, sometimes I hate it in all of its capacity.
No.
It comes more from I do love and enjoy art, but I do not like the process of making it, because I have very little patience.
Uh-huh.
Um, but what I do love is what art is capable of. I
Yeah.
love that it's very clear that some of our most important moments throughout human history have been capstoned by art that has captured the moment. And that's the way I think of artists. Artists are messengers, they are recorders, they are librarians. And it is our job to, to capture what humans are going through, what they feel, capture the zeitgeist, or to commentate on it.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I mean, since the beginning of time, right? Since the beginning of civilization, artists were capturing the hunts that they would go on, the community, the animals in which they were around. So from the very beginning, we were recording things as like the very first like things like scenes in history in the Renaissance and all those scenes and things we see is it's all recordings. You know, maybe it's not completely always of the actual situation, or maybe it's the feeling that society has at that moment. You know, maybe it's a recording of the emotions that we feel, or maybe just, the escapism that some of us are exhibiting at the time, in which we might be in crisis. So, yeah, I can see that. I can understand that. And it is
Right.
very, it's also, something I feel like is, art is also something to help people get away from some of the things in our world. Maybe to create dreams of the different things so that
Hmm.
people have that way to get away from what is historically happening in our lives.
Yes, escapism. Yes.
Yeah. I think
Um,
that's probably what I explore a lot in my work is
hmm.
escapism, but I have done um, statement stuff regarding
Hmm.
situations in society as well, but
Yeah,
mostly escape.
it's okay to escape every now and again. That's perfectly fine.
I think that's what some
Um,
of us got to do. Some of us artists,
yeah,
we're the
especially
escapists.
to keep yourself sane. Yes,
Exactly.
you need a little bit of a little bit of a safe space just to kind of recoup. You know,
Is
even
it's
soldiers have barracks.
exactly, exactly. It's our sanctuary, and I think
Yes,
art,
yes.
in a way, creating the work, I can see how the process itself can be. I guess I lose myself in it. I understand you don't like the process, and I can grasp why. For me, I just kind of escape, but I'm losing time when I do it. But it's
Hmm.
all for me. It's like worth it in the end to create what is the image I want to create. It's worth the
Hmm.
sacrifice of the time, even if the time itself is a sacrifice. You know what I mean?
Right, and that's exactly why I still do it.
Exactly.
um, there's I think there's a common misconception with uh, with the idea that you know you have to love your passion, and I
Mm-hmm.
do, um, but it kind of pulls away from the traditional idea of love.
Yeah.
Um, it's not a love hate relationship because it's more that I understand that these things are things that I severely dislike about the process. I don't like
Yeah.
having to wait for paint to dry. Um, I don't like how long it takes. I don't like that I can't just do the thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like work in the process, uh, and a lot of that is just laziness, if I'm honest. Um, but it doesn't stop me from doing it
Mm-hmm. I think for me,
because
I have this habit. I'm impatient too. I have this habit of not waiting for the paint to dry and just like I'm just gonna blend it and make it
Mhm.
work. Like forcing the paint to do what I want, despite the fact, is it because I just want to continue it. I will work for paint on a painting and just for 8 hours straight and just zone out and not like I don't respect the time that I should give it sometimes
Mhm.
to fix and to dry, and then I oftentimes have to go back and touch things up because I didn't give it enough time to dry on a certain spot. So I understand the
Yeah.
impatience. But
I think as a process, there definitely has its fun moments,
oh yeah,
especially when things start to kind of fall together. Um, there's a few times where I've been working on pieces in this show actually, where I'm working on a piece and I only know to a small extent when it's going to be done.
yeah,
And I like that sweet spot because I love when I actually get done with the piece and I don't realize it until I put that final stroke down.
hmm
And then I look and I go, oh, okay, there it is.
well, sometimes it's like you have an idea in your head of what something's gonna look like, right? But then like something happens while you're doing the work that changes the work but adds an element that's surprisingly good to you. And that's the moments I am happy for when like I do something and it just like seems perfect in that area. It's like this
Right,
art is perfect. It may not have
right,
been what I had planned, but it's like it surprises me in a way, and that kind of makes me. That's the kind of little joys I find in the process myself,
right.
personally.
I don't really have a lot of those moments actually.
Oh,
I do very extensive planning of my pieces, and it's because I have very little patience. I don't like having to think while I'm trying to work. I like
oh.
to envision, plan, and then execute, and I don't like to be planning while I'm painting because that just makes it take longer.
So you have a
Because my
very logical way of working. It sounds like.
pretty much I do a lot of digital sketching. Um, I use Clip Studio Paint.
Oh, I love Clip
Um,
Studio.
yes, yes. Everybody out there, give up on Adobe. Go to
Yeah,
Clip Studio.
Clip Studio. I actually use it on my phone, and I
Mhm.
do all my digital work with my little on my phone, and I have Clip Studio on it.
Yeah, the
Uh,
built-in time lapse feature is the best.
oh yeah. Oh, that is great. It is. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely and Clip Studio did an update a couple of years back where they allow you to bring over PDF. So they're not PDF, Photoshop files. So you
Photoshop files, yes, yes.
So you can upload Photoshop brushes and Photoshop files on it, so you're not limited. If you have bodies of work in Photoshop files, you're not limited to needing to use Photoshop anymore. You can use Clip Studio. So
Yes. My
it's
my Clip Studio has more brushes than the Michaels craft section.
yeah, yeah, I would say mine probably does too, actually. Unique brushes that are custom made by, other artists that and they found, and I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, this is cool. What I really like to learn is how to make my own brushes. I've seen some people do it. I probably would dabble in that eventually at some point. I'm
Yeah.
sure. But so, do you do much like finished digital art, or do you just do your concept work in digital art?
Um, no, I don't really. Actually, I think I've done it maybe once or twice. Done a piece all the way to completion in
Okay.
digital. The plan is always to paint it, and it's not like I believe that digital art is less legitimate. Because of if you're working in digital at a certain level, you're using all the same techniques
Oh
that
yeah.
a traditional artist would use. Um,
Hmm.
but it's more so about knowing that my primary medium is canvas, like paint on canvas. I don't want to interrupt that.
There's nothing wrong with that. I dabble a little in a lot of mediums, so but I definitely understand the focus on a medium and mastering that medium specifically, and
Now,
the importance of that.
I may do more digital pieces just for content's sake because that's the name of the game when it comes to social media is post, 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 content, content,
Hmm.
content. And so, I can a full digital piece I can crank out in a few hours.
Oh yeah.
Um, most of my sketches, the less complicated ones were, done in a single sitting, 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah. How long do
So
you think it typically takes you to finish a full painting?
a full painting depends on the size. The fastest I've done a painting is 3 hours.
Nice.
Like an 11 by 14, like 3 hours.
Yeah, that's about
Um, and then the fastest I've done like a 30 by 40 was about 14 hours.
okay. All right.
So
I was a little curious. I'm kind of a fast worker myself
mhm.
when it comes to art. I can
It depends on the
finish.
complexity.
Yeah, yeah. That definitely is a big element. If you're adding you have a bunch of details to work in and paint, then it's a little more complex. Um,
Yeah.
I tend to
Uh,
work
for,
overly
go ahead.
fast, I think, but I think that's because I don't let things dry, like I said, like others do. And but I'm looking to. I do watercolor too. Have you ever explored watercolor? Or
No, but I do. I want to. I mean, I want to explore all mediums. I primarily use acrylic purely because of how fast it dries. Um,
yeah,
but I want to use everything. I want to put hands on everything.
watercolor actually if you use the pens, the watercolor, they're like
Hmm.
brush pens, right? There's a little sponge in them, and you squeeze them, the water comes out. They do surprisingly dry very quickly, and
Mm.
it's worth exploring. And
You
if
know,
you
I'll have to
do
pick up some Bristol board.
yeah, and if you do like doing the bold lines, I would and you could utilize that with watercolor, and I would suggest using uh, the archival ink pens like microns. They give
Hmm.
good
Yes,
bold lines, and some of them are marker size, so you can
I'm
utilize
not
that.
married to the bold lines.
Okay. Well, okay. Let's see what else. So you described to me the process. So you said your process is you like to sketch it in digital. Could you give me a little step by step of your process of creating a new piece of work from conception?
Oh my God, from conception. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hmm, this let's go all the way back. Okay, so the idea usually starts, uh, something very loose in my mind, and I develop most of the plan purely through thought. I don't really write a lot down until I think the idea is good enough within the mind. And sometimes I purposefully I don't write down ideas because if I forget it, then it wasn't good enough to remember.
Yeah.
And then usually, if the idea lasts maybe a few days, I'd actually decide to write it down.
Okay.
So after that point, uh, Milanote is great if you ever use Milanote.
I haven't.
Great note taking, can create mood boards and presentations and all kinds of different things. It's a
Okay.
fabulous way of organizing your thoughts. But Microsoft Word works just as good.
Okay.
Um, just a lot more tedious with Microsoft. But
Yeah.
I go into notes. I do a lot of research on my idea. So, for example, uh, the piece behind me, uh, and also that one, it's a flip on my yeah. Uh, this one, this piece, uh, the the research for all these pieces uh, mostly entailed etymology. So kind of think about what I want the piece to be and what the piece is going to be called simultaneously because I think they inform each other. So I like to dive into the etymology of words and to break them down, see what's similar, similes and antonyms, like just find the roots of these words, to just dive into them and pick them apart and
Yeah.
see what I can glean from their definitions. And then I usually um, hmm, I'm in the painting process, so it's hard to go backwards.
It's okay.
Um,
It's okay. You had mentioned the note taking. Is it after that that you start the sketch process?
the note taking process is actually the longest process. Uh, I, I I create huge, like you ever seen those boards in detective dramas where they have the
Oh
red
yeah,
lines?
where they're
Yeah,
just like this
mhm,
is connected to this, and then somehow correlated to this, and yeah,
right.
yeah,
And so I'll do stuff like that. So for the piece that I showed you with the mechanical Jesus, that the idea of that piece was based off a word that I found called resistentialism,
hmm.
which is a jocular theory about the idea of inanimate objects having malice towards their owners.
Hmm.
Yes,
That's an interesting concept and word. Then I've never heard of it, to be honest with you.
right, right.
That's,
And I found that word and I kept diving into that. And so I was like, how many different things can I connect to this idea? Because in the theory itself, it's meant to be kind of funny. It's meant to be a funny idea. Like,
yeah.
oh, if your keys get lost, then your keys, hid themselves. Or like when someone, uh, or like if something happens in your car and you decide to kick the tire as if it was the car's fault.
Yeah.
So, human beings kind of do that naturally, that we
Yeah.
kind of apply humanity to something that has wronged us because we believe that that's the only way to register a wrong.
I can say that for a fact. I have said things. Oh, this object, it hates me. It
Hmm.
absolutely hates me, and it's that exact
Hmm.
thing. I'm
Yeah,
blaming it, or if assume that it has, anger or something against me, and is why it's not functioning.
yeah.
So, yeah,
And that goes even further to the idea that, like, like psychologically fundamental attribute error, which is the idea that people behave this way, behave in ways that are not conducive with society purely because of their inner inhibitions or personality, and it's not because their environments or any other external factors. It's only because they're a bad person. Like
some
it's
people
that's
want
an
to watch
error
the
of judgment,
world burn.
right?
They
And it's
just
just
want
not true.
chaos. Yeah. I
Most
think we like to assume that about
mhm.
people a lot.
It's very easy to do so because not it's an inadvertent form of dehumanization.
Hmm.
So you find it kind of funny to that when we are wronged by an inanimate object, we humanize them, but when we are wronged by a human, we dehumanize them.
That's an interesting concept there. That's
Yeah,
true though. It is true. I think that we often, when it comes to other humans, we often dis we dismiss psychological reasons, and we dismiss, you know, what may have provoked a person into doing something. Maybe it was
right,
out of desperation, maybe it was out of sadness, but we don't think of those things when we don't empathize with those people, and we immediately assume that they're just not good.
right. Our environment is very very integral to how we become who we are.
Yeah, very much so.
Um, and then but that's getting into the nature versus nurture conversation. And
Yeah,
the real answer is they're both right.
yeah,
They're
that's a
both
whole
correct.
other thing. Yeah.
But going further past that, once I got resistentialism, I was able to apply that, and it's like, okay, well, what's something that's very clearly happening in our society? Okay, well, technology is on the rise. There's AI, there's iPhones and YouTube and social media and all these things that deeply affect us,
Yeah.
especially a younger generation. I'm sure you've heard of the term iPad kid.
Yes. Yes, I have.
Yes. And so I thought, what if this jocular theory wasn't a theory? What if technology was malicious? What if it did have ill intent? And if it did have ill intent, what would that look like?
Hmm. Yeah.
What instead of treating these things like humanoid creatures, what if they were humanoid creatures? And what if human beings were no longer the dominant species?
Yeah. That's an interesting concept. I explore a little bit of futurism concepts in some of my work. Like I have like little series of like sci-fi future. Like I have the piece I submitted to Critical Mass last year was
Mm,
a robot sitting at an art table, and a little tag that says, "My name is AI," and he's drawing art, and there's all these little famous pieces, but then he has a sign that says no human art. And
I saw your piece.
oh yeah, that was mine. And it
I
was just,
deeply enjoyed your piece.
oh, well, thank you. I'm glad you did. It was the first time I ever submitted a digital art piece to Critical Mass.
Mm,
And I wanted to do that because since I'm mixed media, it's like I usually do an acrylic painting, but I
mm,
wanted to kind of branch out some. But I had a lot of good feedback for that, and I feel like it kind of speaks to what you're talking about. That animosity is there. That you know, here's the AI replacing us. The artist is out on the street, unable to survive anymore, and he doesn't care about human artists. He just wants to replicate their art. So it kind of explores
yeah.
that in general. All right. Well, uh, what else were your process for painting?
Once I have all of the notes and things taken, and I have all the research, and I have all the branching paths, then I start to go back to the mind process. I take everything that I've written down, and then I try to formulate in my mind, what does that look like? What
Mm-hmm.
images can I use to say that message? Because a lot of the time, I'm not going to be putting paragraphs next to my paintings.
Yeah.
And I'm not very big on actually directly telling people what the piece is or about or what everything means.
Yeah.
I want you to try to look at it, and hopefully you're well read enough, or um, you know enough to kind of glean things. And if you don't, you can talk to somebody who does. And then my
Mm-hmm.
paintings kind of start a form of community.
Yeah. Then you can have a conversation about
Yes,
it with
yes.
people. I think that's kind of the
So,
great thing about gallery exhibition openings. You can
mhm.
take a moment to talk about what you're looking at with somebody. And I
Yes,
would
and I want you
highly,
to talk.
yeah, I would highly suggest that. Like, stop and talk to the artist. If you're out, while at a show and you have a question, ask the artist. I'm sure, like, you would love to talk to somebody that is
Hmm.
interested in your piece. I know when people are interested in my work, I love to just. It makes me happy that someone's first off willing to even communicate about it, and then
Hmm.
to hear their perception of it is always fulfilling. I feel, at least for me, it is.
Yes, yes. So
But
once I have the image in my mind solidified, then I try to digitally sketch it. Um, Sometimes I do paper, but paper's very slow sometimes,
it can be,
especially if I'm trying to test colors or I'm going through gradients or things like that. It's just a lot faster
and it's a
to
lot
use
more
digital.
unforgiving than
Yeah.
digital, sadly.
Yes, yes.
So
Um, and for a lot of the time, I'll do a paper sketch and then I'll drag it into digital
oh,
to
that
add
works too.
elements or clean it up or things like that. And
Yeah, I
yeah,
take a good photo of it, just slap it in there, and do a layer over it, and then resketch it.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pieces. There's a few pieces in the show that started as paper sketches, and the paper sketch, for the most part, didn't evolve much when transitioning into the painting.
Mm.
So yeah, so I test my colors, get my gradients, test contrast, things like that, clean up lines. I might try a few different compositions because sometimes what I do is I will paint all the different elements of the painting on different layers. And then
Mm-hmm.
once I have the background, I don't have to keep the initial composition. I can move all these different elements about to see what is optimal for what I'm trying to say or what's the best composition. If I'm trying to push something into the golden ratio, then I can kind of move something over a bit. Um, there is a good amount of math in some of these pieces. If you want to know how to get the golden
Mm.
ratio on any piece that you do, simply take the like any length or width, and then multiply that number by 0.618, and then that will give you a line somewhere around three quarters of your piece, and that's the line at which the golden ratio is.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah,
That's a good tip. Thank you.
yeah.
That's especially useful. I'm very horrible at math, so any tips like that could help. But so and then you when you go to do the canvas, do you project? Use a
I do
projector?
project, yes, yeah.
Okay.
It depends on the size. If it's a large piece, I only project for speed purposes, not for anything else. Because otherwise, I would probably do the grid method, or I would just eyeball it.
Okay.
If it's a smaller piece, I might just eyeball it. But projection is all speed.
Oh yeah. Projection's nice. I've only utilized it a few times on like a wall and a very large canvas at one point, but like
Hmm.
I usually am eyeballing it, but I want to get a better like projector. I feel like
Hmm.
I need to get me one of those because right now I got an old school kind of like you put the paper in and
Hmm.
it's like a big light thing. It's really old school, but you know it works for the bigger things that I need it to. But I need to get me
Yes, yes,
one of those little small ones, you know.
yeah. And once I get it projected, I mean, there might still be a lot of correction that I need to do. Um, yeah, a lot of correction that I need to do. Like smaller details, sometimes they'll get lost because the projection just doesn't have the
Oh
resolution needed.
yeah,
Um, and you know, so
that's
I have.
true.
It's not like I'm completely devoid of anatomy because I love anatomy actually, and I love working with it sometimes and playing around with it, seeing how I can depict the human form in a bunch of different ways. So I actually really enjoy when the projector actually doesn't get a lot of that detail because then I can go in there and do it by hand. And
Yeah,
yeah, I have a little bit of fun there, just a little.
nice. There's nothing wrong with that. I Yeah, but no, I definitely always just have my phone. If I do a drawing or a sketch, I always have my phone on the side just so that I can zoom in and look like how did I do that specifically, you know. But the projectors, they do lose resolution. That is something I definitely noticed when doing work with them.
Yes, very
So
quickly.
even then, I will still keep my phone on me. Like, I don't
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that looks right. But okay, so and from there, once you've painted the piece, do you varnish or seal it in any kind of way, or use resin or anything of that sort? Um,
Um, I only varnish to give it a uniform sheen because
yeah,
I use a lot of different brands of paint and they all have their different sheens. Or
yeah,
sometimes the brush strokes themselves are a bit heavy, and so you can see light bounce off of those. And yeah, I'll probably never use um, like resin or anything like that because I don't like the glare. I don't like the
oh yeah.
glass look.
So
And I
do
also
you
think
do a matte varnish? I'm guessing is what you typically go
sometimes
for.
satin,
Satin. Okay.
sometimes satin. But I also like to play around with the sheens themselves. So I might have a piece where I've masked off certain areas. So when I varnish them, they'll retain different parts of sheen.
Oh,
And so it creates a new element of depth.
that's interesting. I never thought of considered doing that. That's
Hmm.
cool. I like that. It would give it
Yeah.
definitely. I can visualize the depth that it would probably give. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
And
they.
because I also like to hide certain things.
Oh, okay.
So you
And what
have
do
to
you mean?
stand at a certain position in the room to see it.
Oh, I see what you're saying now. Okay, that's
Hmm.
cool. I'm gonna have to look for that in your work uh, when I get the chance to see it. I'm gonna be looking for things now. You have me like I'm gonna have to hunt for stuff. I usually hide things in like small details. Like if I work in acrylic or watercolor, and then in my acrylic I'll use micron pens in the work, so I'll do little like little details, and then the line work you may find a little heart somewhere hidden, or a little person, like a little doodle person in a corner or something that you wouldn't normally see. So I do the
I
same thing.
actually I have a few 30 by 40 canvases that I did, and they're currently hanging up in the lobby of You Need a Biscuit lofts.
Oh, nice.
And there's some stuff hidden in those. Like one of them, there's There's a woman, the pink head of a woman. I think you saw this one, and it has like the blue brain exposed.
Oh yeah, I saw that one.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, there's actually words in that brain,
Oh.
and
Okay.
the words are written using the different contours of the brain tissue.
Huh. Oh, I have to
And
relook at that one now.
yeah, but you can only see it if you're there in person and the
Oh,
light bounces because
that's true.
the lining, the lining is matte blue, and then the actual like brain itself is a glossy blue. So if you stand at a certain position, you can see the. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to look at that. That's awesome. Well, thank you for the tip. I'm sure our viewers that do go and see will be looking all over your pieces now. Um, so, um, well, now that let's go ahead and wrap it up. How can our viewers follow your work and so they can see your process and new shows that you might be involved in?
Um, I have a page on Facebook, Charles the Artist. You can follow me there. I have an Instagram. Uh, you can follow me on Instagram at charles.the.artist. Um, and that's it. You can also search my name on Culturalist. Uh, yeah.
It's a great
Uh,
site. I would suggest it to anybody who's interested in local artists. The Culturist, you go to Northwest Louisiana and do the Explore option. You can find all kinds of artists on that site. They're all local people. So yeah,
yes, yes.
definitely check that out. All right. Well, thank you so much, Charles, for talking to me. I'm gonna try. I'll try to make it to your show. I can't promise that I will make it on the day of, but I'll try to find time to go see it. If I don't make it, then, um,
Send someone else in your place.
yeah, I could do that. All right. Well, thank you for the conversation. If you have other shows coming up or new bodies of work you want to talk about, hit me up and we'll have another conversation about it.
All right. Thank you so much. And I look forward to everyone enjoying my work or and talking about it if they come.